These are told the way the people told them to me, plain, honest, and as close as I can remember. If you've dealt with sleep paralysis, you know that line between dream and waking is thin. These stories sit right on that line. Story 1. The Man in the Floodlights. I used to work overnights at a parking lot near a minor league stadium. My shift ended at 4 a.m., and I'd get home with my eyes burning. I'd crash on the couch because it was closer than the bedroom. That detail matters. The second week of that schedule, I woke up to the sound of stadium floodlights clicking on and buzzing. They were always on a timer, but this was my apartment. I heard that exact electric hum in my living room. I opened my eyes and realized I was lying flat, arms pinned at my sides. I knew what this was, sleep paralysis, but I didn't believe how real everything felt. The living room wasn't dark. It was filled with that harsh stadium white glow like noon under clouds. I could see dust floating. I could see the little pilling on the arm of the couch. I could see footprints on my rug, wet footprints, leading from my front door toward me. Something stood in the light. It looked like a man wearing one of those long vinyl raincoats, the kind fishermen wear. The coat dripped like he had just waded out of the ocean. Water puddled around his boots and inched toward my couch. He had a hood and I couldn't see his face, but I could feel him looking at me like he was waiting for me to say something. I tried to scream. My chest didn't move. My lungs felt wrapped in plastic. I focused on wiggling one toe. People say that helps. Nothing. He took a step. The wet sound of rubber soles peeled off my rug. Another step. The floodlights hummed and popped, like insects were cooking against them. He lifted his arm and pointed at my front window, and I heard scratching on the glass like branches in heavy wind. We're on the 3rd floor. There are no trees near that window. I stared past him and saw a shape move outside the glass, like something was hanging there. It pressed against the window. The man didn't look. He kept pointing, like he was telling me to pay attention. The outside shape slid down the window with a squeal, and I finally felt a little movement in my jaw. My teeth clicked. I used that tiny motion and pushed. I gasped like I was breaking through ice. In a second, the floodlights cut off. My room turned back to dark, and the man was gone. I lay there cold and shaking, couch cushions soaked under my head like sweat had poured from my scalp. The rug was dry when I turned on the lamp. I checked the window. Clean. I told myself it was just my brain misfiring. But the next morning, I found something that still makes me feel sick. The timer for the stadium lights had broken overnight, and they stayed on until maintenance shut them down. My neighbor across the hall told me he woke up around 3 a.m. because he thought a car was parked in our living room. He said the light pouring through the hallway window was like a stadium. Last thing, for 3 nights after, when I walked up the building stairs, the 3rd floor landing smelled like low tide, salt, rot, and that wet vinyl smell you get from rain gear hanging in a closet. I never left the couch light off again. I moved 6 months later. I gave the couch away. Story 2. The Closet That Breathed. This happened in my parents' old house in Arizona, out where the roads go dark by 9 p.m. I had sleep paralysis a few times as a teenager, so I was used to waking up and waiting it out. But this time the thing I saw wasn't a shadow. It was my closet door. It was open just a few inches. That's how I left it. But when I woke up, the door was moving, slow and steady, like it was breathing. In, out, in, out. Every time it opened, a little cold air touched my face. I told myself it was the AC kicking on. I couldn't move. My arms felt sunk into the mattress. I tried to turn my head and couldn't. My eyes were the only thing that worked. The white of the door glowed in the moonlight, and I kept thinking, if I blink, it'll stop. So I blinked. It didn't stop. It opened another inch. Something whispered from inside the closet. It was a whisper used wrong. Loud, purposeful. Like the sound of a person trying to whisper a song through their teeth. I couldn't tell the words. I only caught the rhythm. I realized the rhythm matched my heartbeat. I wanted to close my eyes. I felt if I closed them, whatever was whispering would come out. My eyes started to burn. The door opened 2 more inches with a creak that seemed to take forever. The whispering stopped. Silence thickened. Then I saw a hand slide along the edge of the door, pale gray, long fingers, nails like they had been chewed down to meat. The hand flattened against the painted wood, feeling for the gap like a blind person learning a face. The nails scraped. I heard dry dust fall inside the closet. That was a detail I hate remembering. My chest finally jerked. It hurt like a cramp. I used that pain to force a cough, and the cough broke everything. I sat up fast, gasping, heart hammering. The door was still open just those few inches. Nothing was moving. Nothing breathed. I stood up shaking and reached for the knob. I pushed the door wide. The closet was full of my clothes, my boxes, and hot air. I ran my hand along the inside edge and felt nothing. I convinced myself I was fine and left the door open just to prove it. 2 days later, I pulled a pair of old sneakers from a box at the bottom. When I shook them out, a fingernail fell onto the carpet. Not a full nail, half a nail, thick and dirty, with a ragged edge like it had been bitten off. I cleaned my room top to bottom and never found the other half. My dad said I probably stepped on it somewhere and tracked it in. I never wear shoes in my room. Story 3. The ringing under the bed. I lived in a basement apartment for a year while I saved for my first place. It was cheap, and it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where the fridge motor sounds like footsteps. That winter I started hearing a ringing at night. Faint at first, like something small and metal was tapping the floor. I woke into paralysis one night with the ringing loud and sharp, coming from right under my bed. I kept my eyes closed because I knew if I looked, I'd see something I didn't want to. The ringing kept a pattern. 3 taps, a pause, 2 taps, a pause, 1 long scrape. Metal on concrete. I could feel it through the mattress. My first thought was pipes. My second was mice. My third was that there shouldn't be any pipes under the center of the room, and mice don't ring. The tapping stopped, and the mattress dipped beside my hip like someone leaned their elbow on it. I opened my eyes. I couldn't help it. The lamp was off, but the streetlight painted a little stripe across the carpet. In that stripe, I saw a shape sticking out from under the bed. It looked like an old key ring, one of those dull brass loops with a few keys hanging. The keys were shaking by themselves, tapping the concrete under the bed. That was the ringing. Then a voice came from under the bed. Not a whisper, not a growl, just a tired voice that sounded like it had been underground a long time. It said, "I can't get the last one. Can you see it?" The keys shook harder. A small key slid a little closer to the edge, then back down like someone weak was tugging on it from below. I tried to answer. Nothing came out. I thought maybe if I moved my foot I could kick the keys away and stop whatever this was. But I couldn't move. The mattress bowed again, like something repositioned. I felt a breath on my ankle, warm, then cold, then, and this is the part I never tell right, wet. Like a tongue, but not. Like someone exhaling water. The keys stopped moving. The voice said, "It dropped." Then, very soft, "Help me." The word help dragged like it was heavy. Something clicked in my neck, and I rolled onto my side. The moment I moved, the keys slipped under the bed like they were yanked. I jumped up and flipped the bed frame with both hands. Nothing. No keys, no hole, just concrete, dust, and a penny I know I never had. I couldn't sleep after that. I called my landlord in the morning and asked if there used to be a storage space under the floor. He said the building once had crawl spaces, sealed in the 1970s after an incident. He wouldn't say what. He just said, "There are no more access points." A week later, I found a single old key on my dresser that didn't fit any lock I owned. I still have it. I think if I throw it away, the ringing will come back, and this time the last one will be me. Story 4. The face in the phone. I work hospital nights, and on breaks, I doom scroll like everyone else. I fell asleep on my back with my phone on my chest, screen down. I woke up paralyzed and felt the weight of the phone still there. The room was almost black, except for a thin line of light from the door. The phone vibrated, just once. Then the camera shutter sound went off. That crisp little click. I don't keep the shutter sound on. I never have. Another click. Then another. The phone was taking photos by itself. I couldn't move my arms to grab it. I couldn't shout. The light from the door got thinner, like something stood there blocking it in slow inches. Click. I tried to turn my eyes down to look at the screen, but it was face down. I could only stare at the ceiling and feel the little thump of the camera through the plastic case, like a finger tapping my sternum every time it snapped. Then the vibration changed. It buzzed long like a call. The caller ID light bled around the edges and lit my chin in a ghostly glow. I realized if I lifted my tongue, I could just see the corner of the screen against my bottom lip. The phone stopped buzzing. A second later, the flashlight turned on by itself, blasting my throat with white heat. The light poured up my face and lit the ceiling. And in that sudden bright spill, I saw a shadow on the ceiling that didn't match anything in the room. A head and shoulders leaning over me, close enough that if it had breath, it would fog my eyes. The edges of the shadow were wrong, like hair floating in water. Click, the flashlight went out. I felt the phone slide, like invisible fingers took it. And then something cold pressed the edge of the phone against my teeth, as if trying to pry my mouth open. I forced my tongue flat, tried to choke myself a little, anything to trigger a reflex. My body ignored me. The door light grew again, like whatever was blocking it stepped away. The phone's weight returned to my chest. I could finally lift my hand. I grabbed the phone so hard my fingers cramped. I didn't want to look, but I did. The Photos app was open. The shutter sound was off in the settings, like always. In the camera roll, there were 12 new shots. All of them were from the front camera. All of them showed the same thing. My face, eyes open, pinned, with a pale shape above me, like someone leaning in. In the last photo, the shape was clearer. The face had no eyes, just smooth skin, but the mouth was wide, too wide, as if someone had stretched it open with clamps. Inside the mouth was more white, like a long flashlight beam pointing straight down my throat. I deleted the photos. I emptied the recently deleted folder. Then I remembered photos back up to the cloud automatically. When I checked, there were 11 photos, not 12. One was missing. I've never found it. Sometimes when my screen locks, I think I see that last image flash for half a second before my home screen comes on. Story 5. The Visitor at the Foot of the Bed. I used to hate sleeping at my boyfriend's old farmhouse. The floors talked all night, and the wind was always finding a way to touch the back of your neck. He thought it was romantic. I thought it was like living inside a throat clearing. The last night I slept there, I woke up frozen, staring at the room's corner where the gray meets deeper gray. The bed felt too small, like the walls had moved in. I tried to call his name. Nothing came out. My right hand lay outside the blanket. It was cold and heavier than my left, like someone was holding it down with 2 fingers. A shape stepped into view at the foot of the bed. It was tall and thin, wearing a dress that didn't belong to now. The cloth looked woolen and heavy, cut straight down like it was made to hide a body, not show it. The head was wrapped in what I thought was a scarf, but I realized was hair. Too much hair, pinned down and wound around in a hard crown. I heard the floor talk twice. 1 step, 2 steps. The figure put both hands on the footboard and leaned in like my grandmother watching TV too close. I couldn't see a face until it tilted forward, and even then, I'm not sure it had one. There was a blur of features that stayed just out of focus no matter how hard my eyes strained. The thing lifted one hand and tapped the end of the bed with 2 fingers. Once, twice, like testing for ripeness. It made a soft sound, not quite a hum, not quite a breath. I felt the cold in my right hand deepen until it ached. Then it spoke, without opening its mouth. The sound felt like it came from the wood more than from a throat. It said, "You are in my place." I wanted to shake my head. I wanted to say, "We're just visiting." I wanted to pull my hand back under the blanket. I could do none of it. The figure's head tilted the other way, almost curious. It lifted those 2 fingers again and pressed them together like it was pinching a thread between them. And then it dragged that pinch slowly along the footboard. Wood grated under something sharp. A quiet voice next to me, my boyfriend's voice, said, "Hey," like he was waking up. Relief hit me hard. I thought if he sat up it would break. The figure's head snapped toward him fast, like a bird noticing movement. The pinch stopped. The cold in my hand vanished. For a heartbeat, I felt my fingers. Then the room shrank around me, and my ears filled with the sound of the house breathing, the way old houses do in winter, except it wasn't random. It was a steady inhale that lasted too long, and then an even longer exhale. My boyfriend said, "Hey," again, but the sound was wrong, like he was speaking from beneath the floor. The figure stepped back into the corner. It didn't walk. It folded into the dark, like the dark had been waiting for it. I sat up so fast my vision blanked. The bed was still. The room was ordinary. My right hand was on top of the blanket, but two of my fingernails had thin, dark lines across them, like someone had squeezed them hard with something that left marks. I shook my boyfriend awake. He said he'd been having a dream where a woman stood at the end of the bed and told him, "You're in my place." Except in his dream, the woman's voice came from me. We moved out 2 months later after a pipe burst and ruined half the first floor. The plumber said the pipes were old and the house had a lot of pressure. We didn't argue. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.